66 million years ago, the asteroid hit. The dinosaurs died. End of story, right? Wrong. What happened next was something paleontologists are still uncovering. And it's more surprising than most people realize. The world didn't just magically become the Age of Mammals overnight. For hundreds, maybe thousands of years, Earth belonged to survivors most people would never expect. And some of them were absolutely massive. 3 years after impact, Earth existed in perpetual twilight. Temperatures plummeting, most forests gone, about 75% of all species wiped out completely. But life finds a way. When the dust literally settled, when sunlight finally broke through that asteroid debris, the creatures that emerged to rule this new world weren't the small, furry mammals you might expect. Welcome to the Danian-stage, the first chapter after the dinosaurs. A world that looked familiar from space but was completely alien up close. The forests that did return were eerily uniform. Instead of the rich diversity of the Cretaceous, just a few types of conifers dominated everywhere. Classopolis trees created these monotonous landscapes stretching for hundreds of miles. The strangest part? The silence. No thunderous footsteps of Triceratops herds, no bone-chilling roars of tyrannosaurs, just quiet. Almost nothing moved that was bigger than a house cat, except for one group that was absolutely thriving, crocodilians. These survivors sailed through the asteroid impact like it was nothing. Their slow metabolism, semi-aquatic lifestyle, and bomb-proof body design made them nearly extinction-proof. While mammals were still rat-sized, crocodiles like Botosaurus and Borealosuchus were pushing 15 feet long and ruling as apex predators. Some of these giants had literally lived alongside T-Rex in Hell Creek, and they were still here when the king was gone. Some crocodiles went fully terrestrial. Zulumasuchus was small, but its descendants would eventually become the largest land predators since T-Rex himself. Evolutionary revenge at its finest. Crocodiles weren't the only reptiles having a party. Snakes exploded in diversity. Monitor lizards grew to massive sizes. Even iguanas became dominant ecosystem players. But the real winners were the most unlikely rulers anyone could imagine. Turtles. Listen to this statistic. 80% of Cretaceous turtle species survived into the Cenozoic. Compare that to mammals. Only 7% made it through. For a brief time, Earth was essentially planet turtle. They were everywhere, in huge numbers, and some species were absolutely massive compared to other Danian life. Being abundant also made them the perfect prey for those massive crocodiles. Fossil evidence shows crocs had turtle on the menu constantly. So far, this doesn't sound like the Age of Mammals at all. Mammals were there, and they were changing fast. For the first time ever, some reached sizes larger than a sheep. Still tiny by Mesozoic standards, but it was progress. The Mesonychids appeared almost immediately after the impact, and they were something completely new. The first mammals to truly become apex predators. A mesonychid like Dissacus wouldn't compare to any living animal. Large head, powerful jaw muscles, stocky build. They looked more like something from an alien world than any creature we recognize today. Don't let the awkward appearance fool you. These were efficient killers. Dissacus was coyote-sized, but built like a tank. Some paleontologists think they might have been the fastest runners of their time, which was terrifying, since they were also often the largest predators around. Then came Ankylagon, bear-sized, but scarier than any bear. Why? Those blunt teeth. Ankylagon didn't need sharp teeth because it evolved an absolutely crushing bite force. It would grab prey and literally squeeze the life out of them, then tear meat straight off the bone. Not exactly a gentle way to go. Competing with the mesonychids were the hyenodonts, not to be confused with modern hyenas. These were smaller but had superior senses of smell, making them expert trackers. Their razor-sharp teeth were designed for shearing rather than crushing. During the Danian, hyenodonts stayed relatively small, about the size of a medium dog. But they were patient. Eventually, they would overthrow the mesonychids entirely, growing to massive sizes and becoming the dominant predators for millions of years. Other mammal groups were experimenting too. The Pantodonta and Teniodonta filled various ecological niches, some as omnivores, others as specialized herbivores, but all remained relatively small compared to what was coming. If the land was strange, the oceans were where things got really interesting. With mosasaurs and plesiosaurs gone, a familiar group stepped up to fill the void: sharks. Lots and lots of sharks. Of 28 shark families that existed during the final days of the dinosaurs, only 3 went extinct. 25 groups were still cruising the Danian oceans. Leading the pack was Otodus, meaning ear-shaped tooth. These weren't just any sharks. They were mackerel sharks, like modern great whites, but potentially much larger. Within just 1 million years after the impact, multiple Otodus species had reached great white proportions. But some paleontologists think there was a third species, Otodus obliquus, that hit 30 feet long. These giants ruled the seas completely unchallenged, feeding primarily on sea turtles and fish. They were essentially the T-Rex of the ocean. Otodus wasn't alone. Eels diversified explosively during this time. The first cutlass fish appeared, predatory creatures with massive fangs designed to grip struggling prey. Then there were the truly bizarre species. Near the actual impact crater, paleontologists found fossils of Colostomus, an armored trumpetfish that looked more extraterrestrial than earthly. Its armor was rough, asymmetrical, and protruding, like a coral-encrusted nightmare. The fact that this creature existed so close to the impact site proved something remarkable. Marine life recovered incredibly fast, even in the most devastated areas. Perhaps the strangest survivor was Adeplodon, a chimera fish that reached over 11 feet long. Unlike sharks with their rows of replaceable teeth, these chimeras have permanent tooth plates designed for crushing, cutting, and tearing. For a brief time, these giants were among Earth's top marine predators, eating everything from hard-shelled creatures to any marine reptile stragglers still clinging to existence. Speaking of stragglers, ammonites, those iconic spiral-shelled cephalopods that defined the Mesozoic seas, didn't all die on impact day. Recent discoveries in Denmark and New Jersey revealed species like baculites and hoploscaphites that survived for nearly 500,000 years into the Paleocene, the last remnants of a world lost to time, swimming in seas dominated by sharks. Sea turtles were thriving as well. Multiple species spread across the globe's oceans, becoming a primary food source for the massive sharks and marine crocodilians that patrolled the waters. In freshwater systems, the anguilliforms, true freshwater eels, made their first appearance. These weren't the marine eels that had existed before, but an entirely new evolutionary experiment that would prove incredibly successful. What about the skies? For millions of years, pterosaurs had dominated the airways. Who replaced them after the Great Dying? Initially, insects ruled the air again, but even they hadn't fully recovered, which was probably good news for anyone afraid of giant prehistoric bugs. Among the most common were butterflies, a pleasant change from the massive predatory insects that had terrorized earlier periods. Birds, the dinosaurs that actually survived, were still recovering. Contrary to popular belief, only a small handful of bird lineages made it past the Cretaceous extinction. Their full recovery would take an additional 15 million years. The few bird species that did exist were small, ground-dwelling creatures that looked nothing like the aerial masters we know today. Even the plant world told a story of survival and recovery. The famous fern spike in geological layers shows how these hardy plants quickly colonized the devastated landscapes. Flowering plants, angiosperms, were beginning their slow march toward dominance. But for now, The world belonged to hardy conifers and opportunistic ferns. Climatically, the Danian world wasn't that different from the late Cretaceous. Temperatures remained warmer than today, with subtropical conditions extending much further toward the poles. But the decreased plant diversity meant less carbon sequestration, leading to gradual atmospheric changes that would influence evolution for millions of years to come. Every fossil site from this period tells the same story. Life was rebuilding, but following completely different rules than before. In North America, the Fort Union Formation preserves incredible snapshots of these early Paleocene ecosystems. In Europe, the Danian-type section in Denmark reveals marine communities dominated by sharks and surviving invertebrates. Modern paleontologists continue to uncover new species from this critical period. Each discovery adds another piece to the puzzle of how life recovered from the worst extinction event in Earth's history. Recent finds include new mammal species, marine reptile survivors, and evidence of rapid ecosystem recovery in areas we once thought were completely sterilized. This was Earth after the dinosaurs, not the mammal paradise most people imagine, but a world where reptiles still reigned supreme, where turtles outnumbered almost everything else, where crocodiles grew to monstrous sizes and early mammals were just beginning to test the boundaries of what was possible. The true Age of Mammals was still millions of years away. This immediate aftermath was something else entirely, a brief, strange chapter where the old rules still applied, just with different players wearing the crown. Understanding the Danian period changes everything about how we view mass extinctions and recovery. Life doesn't simply bounce back, it experiments, adapts, and sometimes goes in completely unexpected directions. The mammals that would eventually dominate Earth were still tiny, still experimenting, still figuring out how to live in a world without giant dinosaurs. Meanwhile, other groups seized the moment and briefly ruled a planet in transition. Every new fossil discovery from the Danian period adds another piece to this incredible puzzle, and the emerging picture shows us that evolution doesn't follow our expectations. It follows opportunity. The next time someone mentions that mammals immediately took over after the dinosaurs died, you'll know the truth. For a while there, Earth belonged to survivors, and some of them were absolutely massive. The Danian period reminds us that in the history of life on Earth, the most interesting chapters are often the ones we least expect. Sometimes the meek don't inherit the Earth. Sometimes it's the turtles.